myself. My name is Khairan Nurfast. I'm the founding director of Sports Legal and the chairperson of the East Africa Law Society Sports Law Committee. I'm a member of the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group under the Law in Sport UK, an arbitrator under the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, and I hold an LLM in sports law and practice from DMU Leicester in the UK. I'm passionate about transport and accountable governance, human rights, safeguarding, policy, and management in the field of sports law. And I'm determined to promote equity, diversity, and inclusion of the marginalized and vulnerable groups in and around sports. So for context and understanding, what impact does sport have on the economy? Sport is an important sector of economic activity with contributions in medical treatment, rehabilitation, research, development, sports tourism, sales and trade of sports products, construction and organization of sports events, marketing and advertising, and most importantly, creation of various jobs and opportunities. Sport is currently ranked among the top mainstream activities in economy through its far-reaching implications on the global economy due to its close association with many sectors such as education, real estate, tourism, to mention but a few, and currently generates as much as US $700 billion annually, or a 1% of the global GDP. Now, how does law play a role in sports? Without the rule of law, anarchy reigns. This rings true in all facets of life, and sports is no exception. Law in sports ensures fairness and stability in the industry, protection of athletes' rights, and in the promotion and sustainable growth of the sector. It stems from the rules and regulation in sports, governance, policy, human rights, safeguarding, doping, dispute resolution, contracts, sponsorship, broadcasting, event hosting, organizing, and management. Therefore, law plays a role in this sector the same way as it would in any other part of civil and criminal life. What is a career in sports law? A career is a lifelong working, training, and learning of new skills, a vocation, passion, and long-term occupation. To me, a career is a calling, fixed with drive, zeal, passion, and motivation to make a change, create a legacy, and most importantly, leave something better than how you found it. Sports Legal was founded on this premise, with the vision and goal to provide a platform where we bring renowned and experienced sports lawyers and stakeholders to share their knowledge and to also initiate various projects towards educating, training, and developing sports law and sports in Kenya and Africa. As evidence today, this gathering is a byproduct of this endeavor, among other things we are pursuing. As I conclude, Africa currently stands at the continent with the youngest population, as we can see in this room today. With this, I believe we have the opportunity and ability to create a strong foundation towards building sustainable development of sports, and hence sports law, as a country, Kenya, and a continent, Africa. We are two-faced in the sense that we produce some of the best talent in sports, but at the same time, our legacy is synonymous to corruption, poor governance, poor leadership, lack of or insufficient regulatory frameworks. As a parting shot, my question to you all today would be, you have come here to learn and seek guidance on how to create a career in sports law and becoming a thought leader in the industry. What would then be your contribution towards the growth, development, knowledge, training, and shaping of the legacy of sports in this region? How do we change the narrative in building a sustainable sports system and framework? Lastly, I would like to express my gratitude to all our speakers today and all of you today for taking the time to join this session. Special thanks to our host, Anjarwal and Kana, the facilitators, the East African Law Society, and our esteemed panelists, Senior Counsel John Ohaga, Mr. Munabi Philip, who are here with us today, Ms. Wafika Beg and Ms. Ashta Muhammad Saleh, who are joining us virtually, and Ms. Aisha Abdallah, who is seated here as well, who have graciously committed their time to share their knowledge and experience towards our topic today, navigating a career in sports law in Africa. Thank you and welcome.
Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you, Khairan. Welcome and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Aisha Abdallah. I'm a partner at ALN Kenya, but also I'm a director of a charity which is called ALN Academy. ALN Academy is a charity that promotes the rule of law through capacity building and providing legal education and quality training on legal issues to private practitioners. We are delighted today, in conjunction with the East Africa Law Society, to present this topic of sports law. One of the aims we have as an academy is to introduce new and emerging issues of law to law students, and young practitioners. We want you to understand that the field of law is dynamic, it is changing, and that you need to expand your horizons. Don't just do what everyone else is doing. Try and see if there's an area of law that is coming up that would be of interest to you, and find out how you can develop in that field. So today we will be unpacking sports law, which is a huge topic because it combines something we all care about, which is sports, which I often say is more important than life or death, and something like law, which is something I practice day to day. There is an intersection. It is often not well understood what is the role that lawyers can and should play. We also know that sports is in the news at the moment for a lot of good reasons, but also a lot of challenges that are being faced. Lawyers have a role to play in improving the development of sports and sports law. So turning to my panelists, Philip Munabi, I wanted you to start us off by explaining to us when we talk about sports law, what is it we actually mean, and what are the laws, if any, that govern sports?
Thank you, Aisha. Good evening, colleagues who are here. As introduced, I'm Philip Manavi. I'm a partner at a small boutique firm, which has dreams of being this big. That is why at the earliest, I chose to venture into space that was not so much attractive, if I may say. So many people in Uganda so many lawyers had not picked an interest, I'll say, about 3-4 years ago. So I came into the space. But the question, what is sports law? So many things. It's an interplay of sports as a practice and the laws around it. It's an interplay of how to solve the disputes that arise out of sports activities and the business within it. As senior counsel will take us through the session, you find that whenever there is sports, there is a contract, and breach of this contract is likely to happen. So sports law emerges from the laws or the different kinds of practice, things like intellectual property, things like anti-doping. It arises out of that to form a body of universally recognized principles that can be applied in the solving of sports dispute. Out of it, we have emerging areas. We have a colleague here who is from Dar es Salaam. He's an esports specialist, Mr. Peter here. There are emerging areas, things like esports, sports and human rights. We have different questions today. There's the gender question. I played as a man, now I want to play as a woman. So these are areas that create the body of sports law. Now, when you go deep, you'll find that more so at CAS, there is a question of it being lex sportiva versus lex lucida. Now, lex sportiva is the internationally agreed norms. Then lex lucida is the regulations that govern a specific sports body. Like the Olympic Committee, it has the International Olympic Charter, which is followed or sets down the rules which sports federations have to follow. But then the different sports disciplines also have their own regulations. Like the body of football, today we even have sports law. It has developed to that level that we have sports law. Anti-doping alone, it has its rules. It has so many areas of
for members just joining us, a very good afternoon. You're listening to The voice of Gabriela Chaya. I hope you're able to hear from the venue.
Yes, we can hear you. So Lex Lucida concerns the different regulations. If you'll take time, I'll not give you everything, but I'll ask you to take time to go to the CAS website. The issue of Lex Lucida is, for instance, there's a case, it was a boxing event. A boxer boxes someone below the belt. Then he was dismissed and he contested the dismissal. So when the organizers were contesting it, they chose to go to CAS, but CAS said, no, this is an entirely Lex Lucida issue. The technical rules of boxing have to be solved by the boxing committee. So that's the far and large of sports law. So many of our colleagues out there, or so many people who are enthusiastic about sports law will, on a day-to-day, have business like you register a football club, then you're like, oh, I'm a sports lawyer. But you start picking interest. Personally, when I have a background in boxing. So in around 2017, I joined the Boxing Federation. And they had their constitution, they had their rules, technical rules. Then an issue emerged. It was an elective issue. It was a grudge over who took the presidency, and we went to court. Surprisingly, because boxing is an Olympic sport, their constitution, the boxing constitution, provides that where there is a dispute on the elections, it has to be taken to CAS. You get it? So we were in court, and the judge called me and said, now you people, how do I go about this? This is something new to me. I see boxers, I see you're the same family. How do I go about this? Then I gave her guidance that you see, yes, we are here, but we subscribe to the Olympic Committee Charter. So such disputes have to be pushed to CAS. So that's, I think, briefly what makes the difference between the law that we know that we practice and the area that we need or we want to have interest in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philip. You've used a lot of acronyms, I think CAS, also some Latin. So I feel like before this talk, perhaps we should have had a cheat sheet which told us what is Lex, what is Sportiva, what is Lucida. But the good news is Mr. Ohaga is here to, I think, elucidate some of these acronyms for us and explain to us what are the international laws and the governance bodies that we in Africa have to pay attention to. How do they interact with our own local laws and regulations?
Thank you. Brilliant. Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here this afternoon and to talk to you about something that's an area of passion for me, which is the area of sports law. As you probably know, I have the privilege of chairing the Sports Disputes Tribunal. And for me, that really is something that is the result of my interest in sports and sports law, and comes from my background. Really, going through high school, I think I played every sport that I could find. When I had to be limited, I eventually chose rugby. I'm sure some of you, when you look at my size, you might not imagine that I played rugby, but I did play rugby, including for Kenya. So that's the foundation of my interest in sports law. So CAS is the Court of Arbitration for Sport. And really, that's the apex court so far as sport globally is concerned. And every sporting federation governing sports globally must subscribe to CAS, which means therefore that every dispute that involves sport eventually ultimately goes to CAS. And Lex Sportiva really is the jurisprudence that CAS has developed around sport. But every sport is governed by a body. So FIFA, for instance, will govern football. Athletics would be governed by, who governs athletics? World Athletics. There's a World Boxing Federation. Now, you will also find sports which are governed by different bodies, and there you will find conflict. So for instance, recently we've had a dispute in the Sports Tribunal relating to a sport that I didn't know existed, called Kabaddi. Did you know a sport of Kabaddi? I didn't know there was a sport called Kabaddi. But that sport has generated more disputes than football before the Sports Tribunal. And that is because there are two separate world bodies competing to govern this sport of Kabaddi. And each sport's ultimate objective is to be aligned to, well, eventually to subscribe to the Olympic Charter and to be admitted to the Olympic family, because the Olympic family is the ultimate body that that governs sporting globally. The Olympics are the ultimate arena at which athletes can showcase their skills. Now, as Philip has said, the reason why we require sports law is because sport is about human endeavor. And sports is primarily played on the playing field, as you know. And so there will be rules about how the sport is played on the playing field. And that's the primary arena in which sport will be played. But there will then also be other rules which do not relate to the playing field, but relate to the way sports people and those who subscribe to different sports bodies must behave or must relate with each other. So sports people, for instance, are allowed to exploit their images. Sports people are celebrities. They, once you reach a certain level of endeavor, you become recognized globally. I'm sure that all of you must have followed the US Open yesterday and recognized that we now have a new champion, a new 19-year-old who I'm sure will be leading the sport for a long time to come, following the slipstream of the Williams sisters. And we have another man who has been there for, I don't know how many years. Now, each one of them will be looking to exploit their image, will be looking to generate revenue outside of what they do on the tennis court or in the football field and so on and so forth. All of these then mean that there is a requirement to have a regulatory landscape. There's a requirement to regulate the way that people can govern themselves, the way that people can enter the sports arena, the way that federations can be run, and the way that federations can elect their officials, and the dispute resolution system that they should subscribe to. So in Kenya, for instance, that would be the Sports Act. I recently read that, and I was speaking with Philip about this, Uganda also has recently enacted a Sports Act, and they will have different bodies which are established for the purpose of promoting sport. So the question really is not whether Africa is able to adopt and implement these international laws. It is really an imperative. If you are going to successfully engage with a global community in advancing your sport, you must subscribe to international laws that govern sport. And the reason for this is because As a sports person, your ambition is not to play sport within your local environment. Your ambition is to play sport on a global environment. So every country will have a national team. Every sport person who thinks that they have a skill level that surpasses those of their peers will want to be in that national team. National teams therefore have to compete on a global arena. To be admitted to play in that global arena, you must subscribe to certain international laws and regulations, to a governance system. And that governance system is one that is self-regulating. It is self-regulating in the sense that in the end, international bodies that govern sport are almost like countries in themselves. In fact, when you look at a body like FIFA, in many ways, FIFA has greater influence globally than a lot of nations. FIFA is probably only second to the US and China in its dominance of the universe. And when you step out of line, these bodies have the ability to discipline you by excluding you, by sanctioning you, or by setting out strictures which you must adhere to if you're going to be allowed to compete. So therefore, Aisha, in answer to your question, it is an imperative for African countries to recognize that they must subscribe to international laws and regulations and to understand the interplay between those laws and regulations and municipal laws and regulations which we establish when we enact laws such as the Sports Act and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I actually hadn't heard of the Sports Act, so that's something I think we need to be looking up and reading and discovering what new rights can we link to our fundamental rights under the Constitution that flow from the Sports Act. Turning to you, Philip, again, I think what our audience would be interested in hearing is what opportunities are available in Africa for lawyers and for students who are interested in sports law.
Thank you, Aisha. Thank you, Senior Counsel. I'll approach that question this way. If a person came to you today, a question to anyone in the audience, if a person came to you and said, what kind of lawyer are you? What would be your answer? Anyone who can volunteer. There's a client before you, possible client is asking, what kind of lawyer are you? Quick.
A good one. A good one.
Now, my answer would be, what kind of lawyer are you looking for? Because I may not do what you want me to do, but I might have a partner or a colleague who knows or who can do what you're looking for. Today, as we come from law school, I interacted with a lady up there. She's a student. She said, commercial, yes. But then in our introductory remarks, we got to know that there is a drive to push people into specialized areas of practice. The seniors here previously would register a company and someone is rich. Today, like back home, it's online. And the registration services bureau is deliberate. They want someone to enter with they have even put up one-page format memats. Now, what are the opportunities in sports law? Sports, like I said, is a body surrounded by so many aspects of the law. There are opportunities in intellectual property. There are opportunities in image rights, opportunities in broadcast, opportunities in administration. Now, our role as a generation is simple. How do we create value? I was looking at the sports law, the new Sports Act in Uganda. And as I was reading it, something sounded in my mind. It provides for a list of arbitrators. In Uganda, we may not have person specialized in sports arbitration. But once you qualify as an arbitrator first, then it means you can be on this list. What does it mean to me? I have to be pushed to study arbitration. With my experience in sports law, then I can qualify to be on that list. And this won't take too long. It won't take too long. So our role is to sit down, look at a given sports area, create value in it, and that is the opportunity you have. A while ago, about last 2 months, we had an esports webinar. And while I was looking at doing my research, I realized Kenya is actually, they have people who are going for the e-gaming World Cup. But when you look at e-gaming, from the word go, there are several opportunities a lawyer can exploit. Contract, image rights, IP, so many. So your role as a lawyer is to sit down, go to this gamer, tell them, you know what, I'm a sports lawyer, and this is what I can do to protect your rights so that you can earn out of your gaming. Another opportunity that is coming up, and I think the lawyers will exploit this more, is the FIFA agents. You may all understand, I think you know that FIFA has now, they have come up with a FIFA agency exam that you have to pass to be a FIFA agent. Now, what happens, the exam is set in the rules, agency rules, and a lawyer has more chances and advantage of reading and understanding these rules than any other person out there who would be a sports agent. So they open it in windows. There's a window coming up next year, I think, opening up soon, but the exam will be done in around April. So take hold of those opportunities, look at the field of sports, sit down, think to create value. Today, clients want value. They want value. How do you bring money to them? A sportsman, how do you bring money to them? Like I said, so many things. The previous Olympics, we had a Ugandan weightlifter who got lost. They say he says he got lost. He couldn't remember where the camp was. So he got lost. Unfortunately, he came back home. He was called Julius Sechitoleko. Sechitoleko is lost. Now, there's always a question that whenever teams move out of the country, someone will either get lost or disappear from camp. So it hit bad on the sports sector. So when the guy was found, I think when he got lost and it went all over, the person who had promised to host him rejected him. So he came back and said, I got lost. So when he came back to the country, he was arrested at the airport. Now, this was COVID time. What did I have to do? I got my car. Remember, we weren't moving, total lockdown. I got my car, got my card. I would pass every post saying, I'm a lawyer for Sechitoleko. I'm a lawyer for Sechitoleko. Because it was news all over. Remember, it was COVID time, so news, everyone had to hear it. So I went to Ginger Road Police Station, introduced myself as a sports lawyer. I had my ULS ID, showed it, and I was like, we need this person, he's a sportsman. Yes, he could, his explanation is he got lost. He was in a sports village. You cannot apply national laws to his situation. Then he stayed over. The next day, what I did, I put in an application under the Human Rights Enforcement Act to have him produced in court. Guess what? The CID spokesperson called me and said, Philip, come over to the CID headquarters. I went there. So he kept insisting, this man is spoiling the country's image. And my point was, this man is a sportsman. You cannot apply national laws to his situation. He went into camp, he got lost, and he was released. He was released. So let us be critical of this sector. Think hard. See where we can put value to the athletes mainly, and we shall earn something out of it. Thank you.
Thank you. We know who to call when people do not leave our building on time and get lost. So now we turn to our first online panelist, Wafika Beg. Wafika is going to talk to us about her very interesting journey into sports law, but also some of the mistakes that she came across during her journey and maybe how to avoid them so that we can learn from others. Thank you, Wafika.
Afternoon, everybody. Hope you're all well. Can you see me and hear me? Thumbs up, Karen. Great. I'm going to put up my slide and this beautiful face will be disappearing for 10 minutes. Navigating a career in sports law. Okay. So my name is Wafika Beg Jassim. I work for the South African Institute for Drug-Free Sport. My first taste of sports law would probably go back to 2009, sitting very boardishly at a insurance company, knowing that I'm very passionate about sports, and I studied law and I was an admitted attorney, and I just wanted to break into sports, but no doors were opening. So I had to somehow qualify myself in the field. And trust me, in 2009, this was a very difficult task to undertake, especially for a female in South Africa. I had enrolled myself into FIFA CIES Sports Management Program, which was held at Nelson Mandela University in Port Elizabeth. I graduated in 2010, and in 2011, I was selected one of 5 of the alumni students to attend a International Football Law Congress in Madrid, Spain. I found this Congress to be so fascinating, learning about anti-doping football regulations, and I just wanted to be part of this, and I knew this is where my passion lied, and I want to pursue this career further. I applied probably 2 or 3 times for the FIFA Masters program, and I got rejected every year. That did not stop me. I then applied to ISDE in Madrid, and I got in there and accepted to do my Master's International Sports Law in 2013. And I had a bit of an unfortunate turn of events where I did not get an internship to complete my master's, and I went back to the University of Pretoria to my sports law lecturer, and he gave me an opportunity to do my internship under him, and so that I could graduate. This actually was the best possible thing that could actually happen for me, because it opened up doors for me in South Africa, meeting other lawyers that practice in sports at that time. From there on, I got a job at the South African Football Association, SAFA. There was no specific post advertised. They actually managed to create a position for me as project manager for legal and compliance. And anybody that has worked in football would know there are many challenges that come with working in football: agents, bureaucracy, people not meeting deadlines, no streamlining of actual cases, how to do presentations, dispute resolution, etc. I was there for 2.5 years, and then from there I moved on to anti-doping here in Cape Town. I've been with SAIDS for 6.5 years, and through my journey since 2014, I must say, in football as well as in anti-doping, there were barely any operational standards on how to run a legal department. So at SAIDS, I established a legal department, put operations in place to make sure that our cases can run efficiently, put procedures in place as well, update the sports anti-doping rules to align with the World Anti-Doping Code. This also gave me exposure into presenting at cases in Switzerland before CAS at the Court of Arbitration for Sport, attending WADA's World Anti-Doping Symposium in Poland in 2019, and going to Egypt and training the CEO and general manager and legal on anti-doping. I've been involved in liaising with other anti-doping agencies and assisting also on their operational standards and giving advice. Okay, so what I would say are the biggest mistakes sports lawyers can make. This is just based on my experience. And it's important for you to keep this in mind when you are interacting with other people in the field or people that aspirate to be in the field. How do you present yourself? So it is very important to check in. You know, if I have a certificate in sports law, does that mean I'm a sports lawyer? And you will find that there are people that will say, I'm a sports lawyer because I got a certificate. Oh, okay. What experience do you have? Is there a specific field that you specialize in? No, not yet, but I'm going to. So be mindful of those things. Be assertive. Don't be a poser. It will be very easy to identify when someone is not being very honest. And, you know, if you want to make things work for yourself, try and do your best at, even if you're looking to break into the industry, offer your services. Don't be greedy, especially if you don't come with any experience. Often we will find that lawyers will ask for excessive fees, unnecessarily so. You know, you'll find jack of all trades, but masters of none. So keep an eye out for that. And where there are some so-called sports lawyers, you know, you have to look at quality versus quantity. It's one thing having bragging rights and saying you're a sports lawyer, but what is the quality of your work? How great is it? And you will actually find from time to time, and I have seen this in hearings, lawyers that represent football players or even lawyers that sit as chairpersons of tribunals. You know, the work can be very tardy from time to time, and they have master's degrees in sports law. So just because you have that title doesn't make you necessarily capable. Another thing I actually came across while doing interviews for my department about 2 years ago is people love to name drop. Name dropping isn't sexy, and name dropping is not going to get you the job. So be careful of that. Some people will be impressed if you can name drop people that your interviewer knows, and others won't. And then also don't drop your clients. It's very embarrassing for a practitioner to drop their clients. Word goes around. It's a very small industry. People talk, and you will make a name for yourself if that is the sort of habit you are into. So how can we go about avoiding this situation? I would say bad habits and practices can grow if you do not make the concerted effort to develop yourself as a lawyer. Remember, reputation is everything. In addition to some of those mistakes I've already listed, here are some examples of how to avoid them. Learn from those who come before you. Senior lawyers, both in and outside of sports law, often offer a wealth of knowledge. It is therefore important to make relationships with senior lawyers by way of mentorship and involvement in sporting organizations. So yes, even if it is pro bono, take it. It's your foot in the door. The important tip here is to be part of a team and go out and find your tribe. The next one is admit when you have made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes, and it is your ability to handle those mistakes that determines your ability to be a good sports lawyer. Most mistakes can be fixed, but many can become bigger problems if it's left too long out of embarrassment or fear. Just tackle it head on and admit you were wrong. If the mistake made is one where a client needs to be informed, again, it is best to tell the client sooner rather than later in order to preserve your client's rights. Your client may need to obtain independent legal advice, and it is your duty as the lawyer to inform them of such. Embrace criticism. Often you're going to come across people that criticize your work, but you're new in the field. A frequent mistake is not knowing when to ask for help. That's a frequent mistake, not asking for help. All of us as new sport lawyers yearn to prove ourselves in receiving criticism, and these criticisms can seem harsh and discouraging at first, but guess what? You get used to it. A failure to accept constructive criticism can make you appear unwilling to learn in order to be better. And that being said, try to take direction from the critique to improve. Zone out from the negative comments and do not take criticism personally. It's all part of the learning experience and process. Now, reading the legislation, rules and regulations and jurisprudence. Keep up to date with newsletters from various sporting organizations, sports law reports, podcasts, magazines, etc. Read the legislation, rules, regulations, jurisprudence, every time you are working on a matter. There are nuances in the wording of the legislation that you may not pick up on if you do not review the actual words properly. For example, anti-doping can be a very tricky sort of sports law regulation to read and interpret. So you have to make sure you understand the rules. It goes by strict liability. And often I see and come across lawyers that misinterpret the application of the rules. And even I think it was last month, I came across a board member who had applied to sit on a board. And this board member got confused between sitting on an anti-doping board and sitting on a anti-doping appeal board. So she had applied to sit on the wrong board. And that was quite embarrassing. And what's even worse is she wants to now sit on the appeals board, but she does not know what strict liability is with regards to anti-doping. Now, for me, that is scary as a lawyer, because if I have to present my case and the chairperson or the lawyer sitting on that panel does not know anti-doping, how do we know how well educated that person is? They want to be involved, they want a paycheck, but here's a problem. It's understanding the rules. And sometimes people are just lazy. They do not want to read. So practice good habits. Good communication is key with colleagues and your client about prioritizing tasks and filing in preparation for hearings, drafting contracts, or going into negotiations. So be organized and prepared for anything and try to anticipate what worst case scenario would look like, and then prepare for that worst case scenario. And let your client also know all the possibilities and probabilities in order to manage your client's expectations. Then I think it's very important to invest in yourself, back yourself, and then invest in your client. Put yourself out there. There are important skills to learn and practice right from the beginning. It can take years to build a solid client and a referral base if you're looking to open up your own sports law practice. But being a good lawyer is not worth very much if you do not have a client base and if you are not keeping up to date with the latest rules and regulations in sport. Don't ever stop learning, and always try from time to time to step out of your comfort zone. It's very important to get uncomfortable with what you don't know. Another thing I come across in the industry is people lie. They lie to get ahead. They lie to get noticed. So avoid actively lying to become popular in a niche sort of field such as sports law, because this industry is very small. Everything comes out, and your reputation will be done. If not from one lie, it will catch up with you if your lying becomes a habit. So it's important to just nip that in the bud. Another mistake that I did not actually have in the slides, which I often encountered, was lawyers running to high court. You can't run to high court to get out of situations. Your client prescribes to the rules and regulations of their specific sport. So you have to deal with the internal review before you look at your options of running to court to exercise and request for relief.
Thank you, Afika. That was a very comprehensive roundup of do's and don'ts, and we'll hopefully come back to you during the Q&A. Now I'd like to turn back to my panelists here on stage. John, could you, one of the opportunities that's been mentioned by Philip and also touched on by Wafika is sports arbitration. You're one of, I think you're probably our most well-known sports arbitrator, and you are internationally recognized. How did you get to where you are today, and what advice do you have for our audience?
Thank you very much, Aisha. Well, how did I get to where I am today? It really is, in the end, it is about the passion that you have for pursuing a particular career or pursuing a particular endeavor. As I said, I have a background as a sports person. I played sport. When my sporting career came to an end, I had to think about the question what I wanted to do to remain connected to the sport. I considered becoming a referee, a rugby referee. It didn't appeal to me because, you know, it sort of felt like I was pretending within the rugby field. Here I am with all these people passing the ball about. I would rather be passing the ball than blowing a whistle. So I decided that I would do something that was more aligned to the career I'd chosen. And so I involved myself with the rugby union at the time. I helped them to draw up a new constitution. I helped them to set up their structures. And in the constitution, one of the things that we did even before the advent of the Sports Act was to insert a dispute resolution clause and to establish dispute resolution forums. And that had to be several tiers because there were decisions which are really considered on-field decisions. How are on-field decisions dealt with? How are they reviewed? And then there were decisions which related to matters that maybe did not emanate from the playing field, or maybe emanated from the playing field, but needed an appellate structure. And so having set out that dispute resolution forum, I was then elected as the chairman of the appeals council for the Kenya Rugby Union. And so I started to hear appeals from decisions made by different disciplinary bodies relating to whether a red card should be overturned, relating to whether a game that was abandoned should be replayed, or whether the team should be awarded the points, whatever sort of disputes arose from that. Side by side with that, I was already developing my career as an arbitrator, commercial arbitrator. And I found that the two really went in tandem because in the end, the skill set of an arbitrator is really moving yourself away from the litigation sphere and using your toolkit to be able to resolve disputes in an environment that is not as adversarial, but still to a certain extent mirrors the courtroom, but gives you greater latitude, advances faster, recognizes that sports people require their disputes heard within a certain time frame, and ensuring that you are there to those time frames. And you really have to remove your litigation hat, because I know most of us, our primary training as lawyers would have been in litigation, and you find that people are stuck in a litigation mindset. But you have to be able to move yourself away from that mindset and to adopt a more ADR-related mindset. And so all this was before, as I said, before the advent of the Sports Act. The Sports Act came into force in 2013. So what I then found was that parties began to approach me as an arbitrator in relation to sporting disputes where there was an arbitration clause. And I remember in particular, just back to the rugby sphere, there was a dispute between the Kenya Rugby Union and two coaches that the Kenyan Rugby Union had engaged to coach the Kenya Sevens team. These two coaches were both South African, and the contract that they had structured was a contract which gave them a bonus if the Kenya Sevens team got to the Olympics. At the time, the Kenya Sevens team was flying high, but they needed to secure a spot, you know, in one of the few spots that were reserved for Africa. And what happened was that shortly before the last tournament at which Kenya would have qualified for the Olympics, the Kenya Rugby Union sacked these two coaches. Kenya then went into this tournament and Kenya won the tournament and qualified for the Olympics. Now, the dispute that arose between the coaches and the rugby union was the question whether these coaches were still entitled to the bonus that they had been promised in their contracts, because the contracts had, in addition to their pay, indicated that they would earn a bonus if Kenya qualified. Now, The difficulty, however, for these coaches was that when Kenya sacked them, they then went to coach Namibia. So they actually coached Namibia through this tournament. And so it became very difficult for them to sustain a claim relating to the bonuses that they had been promised in their contracts, because they actively participated in trying to undermine Kenya's attempt to get to the Olympics. In fact, Kenya met Namibia in the finals. And you know, one of the benefits of arbitration is that, you know, in arbitration, we allow you to use PowerPoint, you can use video evidence and so on. And one of the things that was shown to me on video was a video of one of the coaches running up and down the sideline, really excitedly cheering a try that Namibia had scored. And so the question was, in all honesty, can the coaches claim the bonus? Because they were saying that Kenya had essentially cynically terminated their contract when they had done everything to prepare the Kenya team for this tournament. And so Kenya essentially was riding on the work that they had done. And the fact that they had been terminated before the tournament should have no impact on their ability to claim their bonuses. So in the end, I reached the conclusion that they couldn't claim their bonus. They were entitled to the other emoluments that hadn't been paid to them, but they couldn't claim their bonus. But one of the things that this opened my eyes to was also the versatility of arbitration as a tool for resolving sports disputes, and also for minimizing the costs when you're resolving sports disputes. Ordinarily, because I was sitting in Nairobi, one of the coaches had already secured employment in Germany. The other coach had secured employment in Chile, if I remember correctly. Now, if they were disputing, or if they had brought their claim in a national forum, such as a court of law, they would have had to both incur the cost of coming to Nairobi, testifying before court, paying for their airfare, hotel, and so on. One of the things we were able to do was to structure a forum which allowed them to testify by video conference. And all we had to do was to ensure that we synchronized the times between Nairobi, I believe it was Frankfurt, and whatever city it was in Chile, and to find a time that worked. And the time, interestingly, that worked was 3 p.m. So we ran our arbitration from 3 p.m. to about 9 p.m. And were able to take the evidence and to allow them to have a relatively cost-efficient process. And so when the Sports Act came into force and the role of chair of the Sports Tribunal was advertised, quite frankly, I thought it was tailor-made for me. So I applied for it. As you would expect, there were other people who applied for it as well, but I was selected as chair of the Sports Tribunal. And that then gave me a platform to be able to advance my my career as a sports arbitrator further. But it doesn't stop there. It means that it was just the beginning of the journey for me. And the thing that I found was that you have to be prepared to invest in yourself. You cannot look at a career as beginning to generate an income for you right from the outset. One of the obstacles that I encountered straight away was the Sports Tribunal was one of the few tribunals that was under the judiciary at the time. And for about a year, actually more than a year, we received no sitting allowance, but we would hold our sessions every week. It was very interesting for me because when you apply for a role without the primary purpose of it being an income generator for you, you find that you're then able to explore much further. And I found that the Sports Tribunal was ideal for me because one of the things that it doesn't have is it does not have any quorum requirements. And so 6 months into my chairmanship of the Sports Tribunal, the other members of the tribunal said to me, Mr. Chairman, if we're not going to get paid, we will stop working. We will stop attending the tribunal, and this will pressure the judiciary into meeting our allowances. But I had a reputation to safeguard. I didn't want to be known as the chairman who boycotts his own sittings. And so I said to them, well, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't want to attend the tribunal, that's fine. I will continue to hear matters before the tribunal. So for about a month, I was the sole member of the tribunal hearing matters, and without any objection from parties, because the act does not stipulate any quorum requirements. I also found that in terms of investing in yourself, after a while, the tribunal generated interest across the continent, across globally, and I got invited to different countries to talk about the Kenya Sports Tribunal. When you get invited to places like those in our arbitration space, nobody says, I will pay your airfare or I will pay for your hotel accommodation. Oh, please, may you add volume? Yes. Yes, thank you. So when I think back and I think about the time and effort and resources that I have expended in advancing my career, it is probably a much higher amount than the sitting allowances that I have been paid to sit as chair of the Sports Tribunal, because I've been to far-flung places just to talk about the Sports Tribunal and sports arbitration. But what it does for you is to extend your standing, your profile as an arbitrator in the sports environment, and it really means that you are continually investing in yourself. You're continually, if you're going to be speaking to audiences of people who are already well versed in an area that I suppose you put yourself out as knowing something about, you have to have some knowledge about what you're going to be speaking about. And that means continually educating yourself. And so what I have done is to continually educate myself, make myself available for forums like this, to teach, to learn, and to continue to extend my knowledge. So that's how I've come to where I am.
Thank you so much. And obviously, this journey has led you here today, this afternoon, and we're very grateful. Turning back to you, Philip, we've heard a lot about opportunities, being driven, making a commitment, investing in yourself. How do you do this in a way that allows you to carve a niche for yourself in sports law? Because sports is very broad and we can't know about every single sport. And you will have a preference for boxing, John for rugby, myself for football. There is a niche here and you want to be unique. How do you do that?
Thank you. It starts with passion and it moves with passion. It ends with passion. My passion for sport is boxing. I do box. So I moved that into a niche into sports law. How? I started with administration when a colleague of mine, who is the president of Uganda Boxing Federation now, contested in 2017. We found no structure for the federation. It had no structure. It was just a container office with the PRO acting as the president. And what I studied in my mind is I studied the history of sports actually, how these federations came to be where they are. It is a simple thing. You're a desperate person, you're an orphan, you're talented, so you play football, you play tennis, you do swimming, you do boxing, etc. Now, when you retire as a sports person, you enter administration. So it is your cosa nostra. It's our thing. Actually, when you venture into that space, that will be the first thing. They are so biased about a lawyer coming into their space. Now, what are you talking about? They would tell me, now you're talking as a lawyer. You don't know the technical things of boxing. You don't know the technical things. Now, what is technical to them is what they see here. But boxing has what they call the technical rules. Now, I looked for the technical bit of boxing that they were talking about. The IBA, International Boxing Association, has the technical rules that are followed. You don't box here. This is how you score. This is how long a match is supposed to be. So I picked interest in that. I first restructured the administration. Talked to my colleague. I was like, you know what? We need a corporate structure here. We need a secretariat that is functional. We put that up. Then after that, I looked out for who is talking about sports law. Around 2019, if I remember well, there was a flyer on a sports arbitration workshop. It was here, just a one-day workshop. I got myself on flight. I came, attended. That was it. Around 2020, I think, I get another flyer of sports mediation. It was organized by Inaugural there. So I was like, okay, it was about $300. 300? Yeah, I paid. I told some few colleagues of mine back home. They also paid and we went into the training. All that is passion, because no one is meeting your bill, but you're driven by the passion to be into it. Then back home, there was the Olympic Committee. You should actually interest yourself in the Olympic Committee. Be close to them. They have a free training for sports administration. I did a sports administration course, and it has stages actually, because I want to pursue the master's. You do the certificate, you do the diploma, then you do the master's in sports administration, fully sponsored by the Olympic or the International Olympic Committee. That is passion. Second is the willingness to network. The willingness to do what? To network. The former president of ELS, Mr. Bernard Oundo, he had followed me and I was part of his team during the campaigns and all that. So in his mind, he actually calls me, he always says, you're the sports lawyer, you're the sports lawyer. So when he was at the ELS, he just got the concept of committees. It was like, we need committees. Then I think he looked out for Noel, appointed her as chairperson. Then he got me, put me on the committee. The first year, of course, it's a concept that people didn't understand well. So it wasn't given too much attention. But later, the CEO here calls me, Philip, we need to pump this thing up. What do we do? I was like, okay, let's organize sessions. We have online webinars. And I'll tell you one thing. Whenever a session comes up, we have names that we bring up. It will be AC John Ohaga. It will be Don Lukari in Uganda. So there are these sessions. Be part of them. Then there is also, the other point is the zeal to pursue further education. You're a lawyer, yes, but there's a sports law course that is coming up. We have the FIFA law course. It's a diploma, FIFA law diploma. We have now the agency. We have a gentleman here who just completed a master's. Have the zeal to pursue further education. I did the NTO course in Uganda for boxing. It's a National Technical Officers course. So I can understand the sport of boxing from the word go, technically, but it required me to do a course. That you need that zeal to pursue further education. I'm looking out for a master's, but I'm also thinking now, I have a growing law firm, but then in this area now, everyone, I'll tell you, everyone looks out for me. I'm not bragging. But copying from what Senior said, people will leave you there. Ask her, when we're on the sports law committee, you task people, look out for speakers, do this. But when you're innovative, the universe aligns. When the law of willingness, the unique thing about the law of willingness is that once you will, the universe aligns. In 2022, I got an email to be part of the Uganda Olympic Committee Strategic Committee, the Strategic Development Plan. You get it? When the Sports Law Act, the current act, when there were consultations, I got an email from the clerk, clearly entitled, Munabi Philip, sports lawyer, we need your opinion. You get it? All these things you're doing for free, but then you have the hope and willingness that it puts you out there. You may stand out as a sports lawyer and you may not get business, but someone in a different sector who knows you as a lawyer will use that to your advantage and give you business. Lastly is the courage to obtain requisite skills. He says he was a rugby player. Every sport has a code, like so many codes. The upcoming Olympic Committee, there's always a code for the Olympics. So you need to have the courage to look out for knowledge and skills in a particular sport of your interest. There are so many. There are sports like Zurukane, Kabaddi. Kabaddi is a tap sport. We played it when we were young. You tap me, I tap you. It's a tap sport. Now, that is how you create your niche. Eventually, someone looks out for you. There are not so many female players in this field. In TZ, there's Judith, who has even been appointed on the FIFA tribunal. Now, you see how it's expanding. FIFA itself has now the FIFA chambers. There are 3 dispute resolution mechanisms. They have the agency, they have the players, they have the dispute resolution. Because sport, mainly at FIFA, it involves a lot of things: labor, employment, agency, player status, my image, my rights as a player, a lot of things. So you look out for a niche by identifying with it, driven by your willingness and passion. I was telling a colleague, I said it here even, and I had people laugh. We have now the sports and human rights, which is coming up. You're passionate about human rights. Look out for those areas in sports, because it's coming up, it's cropping up. You already have cases. I played female, now I want to play male. You get it? So a lot of things will come up, but use your knowledge to pick out an area and go for it. Like I said, I'm going for arbitration. I'll do the arbitration, but the background and the knowledge in my head is sports arbitration. Today I'll start as, I'll do any arbitration course. I'll start as an arbitrator. Eventually, they'll be looking for sports arbitrators and they'll look out for me. So do that with zeal, with passion and willingness. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So now we turn to our final panelist again, who is virtual, Achta Mahamat. Achta has gained a lot of experience developing sports law across the continent. She'll talk to us about her career and also some of the obstacles and challenges when you are at the development stage, you're coming up with rules, regulations, structures. What are these challenges and what can you do in terms of overcoming these barriers? Thank you, Achta.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. I take this for a yes. It's a pleasure to join you today. I have had the pleasure, it was really interesting listening to all the panelists. So I will take you through my journey into sports law. I will just close my my camera because I'm afraid that my internet connection would be not so good with the camera on. So I'll open it later. So for myself, regarding my journey in sports law, I have started my career in 2006 at the African Confederation of Football as a project manager. In this time, I have been at the same time studying. I have been preparing my Master 2 degree in international business law. So in order to pass my master degree, I had to write an essay. I have chosen the subject of my essay was the creation of the Legal Affairs Division of the African Confederation of Football. Because at this time, there were no Legal Affairs Division at CAF. I had the chance to make an internship at FIFA and study the legal division at FIFA to help me write my essay. So I took inspiration from the FIFA legal division. I wrote my essay, I passed my Master 2 degree. And then subsequently, I had the opportunity to apply for a position at FIFA, and then I joined FIFA as a legal counsel at the FIFA Player Status Department. So I went to Switzerland. I worked at FIFA for 2 years at the FIFA Player Status Department. From there, after 2 years, I felt the need to come back to my home country. I'm from Chad, so I went back to Chad. I created my own law firm specialized in business and sports law. In parallel, I have been appointed as head of the legal department of the Chadian Water Company. In 2017, I have also been appointed as a constitutional counselor and judge at the High Court of Justice in Chad. In 2018, I returned to the sports field. I have been appointed the Director of Legal Affairs of the African Confederation of Football. So what is interesting here is that I had the knowledge and experience that I acquired at FIFA as legal counsel. And in Chad, I have worked a lot with contracts and business law per se. So here, when I came back to CAF, I could use this knowledge and also my essay, the essay that I wrote for my Master 2 degree. So then I had the honor to create for the first time a legal affairs division at CAF. I am currently an off counsel at the law firm Morgan Sports Law, which is an international law firm specialized in sports law. Talking about all the obstacles that I have encountered and that I noticed regarding sports law in Africa, I think that the first one is the mentality that we have in Africa regarding sports. Some of the panelists have spoken about that already. I think one thing which is important is to note that although now we see that there is more and more interest in sports, in Africa, most of the time we see sports as a second field. For example, I know in Chad, I take the example of something that I know, they will tell you, listen, we have more important problems. We need to develop health sector. We need to develop finance. We need electricity. So why are you talking about sports? So they see sports as a kind of recreational domain. So I think this is one of the major obstacles, because how can you develop sports law if even the sports industry is struggling to be developed? So for me, first of all, we need to see sports as a priority to develop sports. The second recurring obstacles that I see from my experience is that generally in Africa, we refer to lawyers or to law only when problem arises. We have really a little interest in establishing, like for example, legal text regulation, even in the legal legislation, national legislation. So I noticed that when problem arises, they will come to you and they will ask you to find solution. We need to have really comprehensive and legal text, I would say that. The third obstacles challenge that we can note is we need efficient deciding bodies. Some panelists have spoken about national dispute resolution chambers. We know that, for example, arbitration is developing more and more sports arbitration. But I think at some point, and then I will talk later about the Court of Arbitration for Sports, which is now for many sports areas is the recognized appeal body. And I know that, for example, CAS is presenting a lot of challenges for sports lawyers and for sports people in Africa, seeing that it's in Switzerland and not talking about other issues, but like, for example, the appeal fees can be really costly when you see the difference. If you are in Europe, for example, and if you are in Africa and you made the conversion in our money, it's really important. And I see that as a huge, how can I say, obstacles, because we can have good text, we can have good sports lawyers, but we need to have also deciding bodies, which we can go easily and not costly. Another obstacle that I would like to speak about is something that is quite personal, I would say, because this is something related to African sports lawyers compared to others non-African sports lawyers. I'll explain my what I say is that, for example, I think there is a kind of quite important inequality speaking about training, for example. My friend Wafika, when she was telling us her interesting journey in sports law, she talked about being in ISDE, being graduated and not having an internship opportunity. And I know that for many, this happens for many students, sports law students, and sometimes I know for the cases that I have been involved, and I know the people, most of the time it's related to being African, and some firms or some countries will not let you have the visa to make your internship, or it will be more difficult to join some firms as African. This can also be related to the second obstacle as an African sports lawyer is speaking about opportunities. So my first point was that the sports industry is not so developed, and so I think opportunities for sports lawyers is related to this undevelopment, because then we don't have such opportunities. The field is not so developed. So in terms of opportunities also, I think we are quite limited. In terms of opportunities, I can talk about also opportunities for African sports lawyers in international sports institutions. I used to go, like, for example, at FIFA, but of course it was in 2006, but I was the first, I wasn't the first, but I was the only, at the time, the only African coming from Africa, because others people, they were African, there were 5 African at this time, but they were born and raised in one of the countries in Europe. And I know also later when I was looking for a job that for some institution, they will tell us, listen, we have a cooperation agreements that we need to hire only people from these countries, speaking about institution in Europe. So we need really to know about these things, because unless I have been told so, I didn't know that these rules exist. And yeah, there is also another inequality for sports lawyers, African sports lawyers, I would say, like for when you exercise as a sports lawyer. I don't know if for me, for example, I am a woman. I am an African young woman, so sometimes it's quite not easy to have the same credibility than I would say an European male sports lawyers. So now I'm okay because I'm working with English sports lawyers. Most of them are men. So talking about credibility, I see that it will. We can say the same thing, but what they say will be more considered. I know that maybe some things are hard to be said, but we need to know it. And for me, of course, this is not going to be used as an excuse to say that, okay, sports law is not for African and not for women. On the contrary, what I'm saying is that I love what I have. I'm really grateful for the journey. It wasn't easy, but I really encourage women, African women, if you want to do it, go do it. You will enjoy it. I think all the panelists were talking about passion, and I think there are so many advantages working in there. And then you will end up strong, not only for your work, but even in your personal life. Regarding how to overcome these challenges, my first point would be to have more collaboration between sports lawyers, African sports lawyers. For me now, we need to go more together. We need to have a comprehensive text even on national laws or regulation for the sports institution. We need, of course, trained sports lawyers and reliable deciding bodies. So there is a discussion that has been going around for a long time now to have an African Court of Arbitration. For me personally, I think we're not ready for this, but I think we can already start working on transitional system, and why not give ourselves like in 10 years or 5 years to have our own African Court of Arbitration for sports. So I'll end up again encouraging the young people and qualified sports lawyers, general lawyers. If you want to work in sports law, it's very interesting. It's not the easiest field, but it's really passionate and it's worth it. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here with you today and to listen to our excellent panelists. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Achta. And that leaves us about 15 minutes to open it up to the audience, both online and physical, to ask any of our panelists, including Khairan, who spoke at the beginning, questions. So I'll just ask if I can have 1 or 2 volunteers to take 2 mics into the audience and see if we have any questions. We should also encourage any of our virtual audience, if they want to ask a question, can you please put it on the group chat, and one of my assistants here is going to make sure that we cover that. So initially I would take 2 questions from the audience, and then maybe 1 or 2 questions virtually, and then we'll see how we get on. Thank you.
It's only from the room.
Thank you very much to Achta. I think when you spoke, I was like, there's been a lot around women and sports, and I don't know, I don't want to mention the cases at Manchester United, because I know there's a Greenwood and there's an Anthony issue, and there's a lot around there. And the fact that women are now getting more into sports law practice, I think this is a very good avenue for them. I have a question around training, because I deal a lot with training and capacity development, and most of the people we have in this room are potentially young lawyers or even students. And I would want to know what courses are available right now in the market if someone really wants to become a sports lawyer. That's within Kenya, within East Africa, within the African continent, and even globally. And if there's something, this is for you, Aisha, we can do the ELS Institute and ALN Academy. Because I was speaking to someone who wants to launch a course on sports arbitration in Africa. So the idea was, can we localize this? And ALN being a charity, can we probably offer a few opportunities? Either we subsidize it with the ELS Institute or we offer it for free, in this area of sports law, either directly dealing with arbitration or generally. Yeah, thank you.
So we'll just deal with that question. It was in two parts. The first part, which is what courses and training are available. I'll ask Philip, please, if you can cover that, and then maybe I can do the second part.
There's a sports administration course under the Olympic Committee. Each National Olympic Committee does that training. So as ELS, ALN, you can look out for who is in charge. I don't know why we never spoke about it as a challenge. In the region, we don't have a unifying course. There is training on sports mediation. I don't know if she has carried it on under sport legal. Back home at the Uganda Christian University, there is a sports law course unit. Good enough, it's done by one of my colleagues called Kajubi Brian. He's an associate at Max ALN. Then the opportunity is that these seniors here are very willing to share knowledge. I know whenever I reach out to them, they are willing to share knowledge. So the opportunity we need is for you at the institutional level to sit with them and design a course. It could be an introductory course. Sports law courses are very expensive. The gentleman here just completed one. It's very expensive. I've seen an opportunity by AFBS. There's a summit on 13th and 15th. There is ISDE. It's a university. It's a foreign university. Of course, it has given scholarships. I've seen Brian Wesala around, the director of the Football Foundation for Africa. It has his at the back. It has opportunity in the networking sessions. We can talk to him. They have offered scholarships to those who might be interested. It's a nice college. It's where Peter was. And one of the facilitators there, Dev, who I thought was, he's also up there. So those people are willing to share. For what I know, they are willing to share. So I think it is easy, like Achta said, that as we program ourselves to having full-scale litigation in sports law, we need training at the earliest opportunity for those who are interested in this area. An introductory course would be good because it's about applying your knowledge in the law into the sports arena. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the previous panelists also mentioned a number of other interesting courses, for example, the FIFA Law Diploma, and there seemed to be a FIFA course for agents. I'm sure there are many more. I know there are actually universities that are dedicated just to sports as a field, not necessarily law, the wider sports, so physiotherapy, all sorts of things. Law would be one of the paths that people can follow. I think that what I would just say is, I think people should be cautious about spending a lot of money before checking with the market that if you attain a certain accreditation, it is actually of value. Sometimes I feel that people market courses that are expensive without necessarily them really giving people a pathway. Because I think what we've heard from the panelists today is these are people who had an interest anyway in usually a specific sport, and they just develop that in sort of a natural, organic way, as opposed to somebody who just decides, I'm going to become a specialist in judo, and they have no actual interest, and then they do a course. So I think there is maybe some caution there.
David, for instance, last year, the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators ran a course on sports arbitration. I was invited to facilitate that, which I did together with Professor Dr. Moni Wekesa. You know, he's a specialist in sports law. So he essentially dealt with anti-doping, and I dealt with the regulatory framework. So it really, I think we have to empower ourselves. Once we do that, then it needn't be expensive. We can tap into the resources that we have available and ensure that it's well marketed and that we have momentum for it. And then it can run from year to year, and you just set up a faculty. I think these are things that we can do if there's the goodwill is there.
And I think somebody, Wafika has put, kindly offered to allow people to contact her if they want some more information. Just from the ALN Academy, we are a charity. We'd be interested in capacity building in this area. But I think one of the challenges we face is that there's always a question of funding. So if we could get some donors who could support, then we would be very happy to, you know, provide support as well. I think it's just about getting the right partners to come together. And I think this event for us is showing our willingness to support this area. Maybe on a longer term, we don't like to do one-off events. We're hoping this will be the first of a longer term collaboration with the East Africa Law Society and with the Sports Committee. So I think if we could just maybe take one question from the online audience. Do we have a question there? For Arush, could you say what the question is and the panelists?
What are your opinions on the concept that guilty until proven, innocent until proven guilty, as shown in the recent case by the following players: Greenwood, Mason, Mendy, and Anthony?
I'm assuming that's for our arbitrator here and our
Yeah.
chairman. Please, noting that we don't actually know which clubs various of us support, and I will say that I particularly am biased. Do you want to guide us?
That's interesting, but it's a concept that we recognize from doping jurisprudence. In doping jurisprudence, you're guilty until proven innocent. But having said that, I think it's a phenomena that we're seeing arise, and it's very interesting for me, because it isn't just the question of Greenwood and Anthony now. We've seen the whole issue around the Spain the coach of the women's football team. And you've seen how it can detract from the success on the field. And suddenly you have, you know, what you should be celebrating as a federation spirals into a sideshow, so to speak. But I think it is also greater sensitivity to the way that sports people conduct themselves around the other gender. In Kenya, it has been an issue that we've had to deal with at the sports tribunal. When you have issues around male coaches for female teams and male coaches requiring sexual favors in order to select select you to the national team, for instance. It's one of the governance, well, it's more than governance. It is really how should we behave in the sporting environment. The problem is for a long time, sport, I think, has been very male dominated. Sport is to a significant extent very adrenaline driven, lots of testosterone. Women are just coming into their own in terms of participating in a lot of sports, women's football, women's rugby now we see. And there's a lot of interaction in that area, but also once you achieve a certain status as a sports person, there is also attention that comes to you. Some of it is unwanted attention. We saw with Mendy having been prosecuted for alleged assault against various women. After going through a lengthy trial, he was found not guilty, and now he has to revive his career. And it is really an issue that that is very troubling, because it's very difficult to see where the truth lies. With Greenwood, for instance, there's been no prosecution. I think the charges eventually were dropped after investigation. Social media says he even reconciled with his girlfriend, or she opted not to pursue the charges. But as a result, his career at Manchester United essentially has stalled. He's had to move to a different club in a different country. Anthony has been suspended by the Brazilian national team, and now his club has had to do the same thing. What you don't want to prejudge is the question whether these women are exploiting the celebrity status, whether it is a blackmail scheme or what is it. And there's always stories from both camps. But as you say, the difficulty is you're guilty until proven innocent, because it's a whole, it's something that once it gets into the public domain, it gets its own momentum. And as a result of that momentum, people judge you. It detracts from the attention on the playing field. It detracts from the team's ability to focus on what they should be focusing on, which is performing on the field. And you become essentially a distraction. And as a distraction, no high performance teams can afford that sort of distraction. And you simply have to get out of the way. So I don't know whether it is the weaponization of sexuality. I'm not very sure, but I also recognize that even when you kick your cat, it also becomes an issue. Once you're a footballer of a certain profile. So very difficult to say, but I think it's unfortunate.
Thank you. The kicking of the cat will be covered in another course next year, appropriately. I think we should take 2 more questions, please, and then we'll have run out of time. Sorry, let's allow the audience. I think we've spoken quite a lot from the stage. There are 2 people, one in the middle and a lady behind that gentleman with glasses, and then I'll be rounding it up, please. No, there are 2 in the middle, please.
Hello, and I'd like to say thank you to all the panelists, online and physical. So my question is to Senior Counsel John Ohaga and Achta, and what are your views on the current case of CAF versus Bein, and how does it affect us as an African continent in terms of sports?
My name is Kelvin. My question goes to Senior Counsel John Ohaga. I have 2 questions. Number 1, when you talked about the CAS jurisdiction, there are some federations that have limited pathway to CAS. For example, the FIA. I know the FIA does not recognize CAS in issues to do with its disputes among its members. So, and when it comes to CAS and dispute now in the Kenyan context, so how do you go about it? And number two, okay, that's all.
Okay, good afternoon. So my question is with regards to Wafika's presentation where she spoke about subscribing to sports law newsletters. Personally, I've subscribed to one by Law in Sport, which Hiran is a member. And I was thinking to myself, do we have such a newsletter in Kenya or even East Africa? Because I look at the opportunities that are usually presented at that newsletter. You see legal counsel, Tottenham Hotspur. But then normally we will not really be qualified probably to practice in the UK. So is there like a Kenyan newsletter for some of us to subscribe so that we can continue keeping tabs with this ever growing sports?
Hello. I think I was the last one, sorry. My main question, I wanted to bring us back to enforceability. And Mr. Ohaga, I think you'd be best to answer this question, seeing as you're in the sports tribunal. And actually also our brother from Uganda. We know, when I bring us back to where we're actually from, we know sometimes democracy is a bit of a mudded context or subject. So I wanted to ask, when it comes to enforceability of foreign arbitral awards in Kenya, I remember Mr. Munabi talked about something about creating value for our clients in sports law. Now, the thing is, sometimes we might have disputes that come and we want, and it goes to the whole point where you've gone for arbitration and you've gotten your arbitral award, but now you want that enforced into the country. Now, the problem is, especially with Africa, it's one weakness that we normally have when it comes to the bureaucracy and the corruption that is normally here in the country. So how do you toe the line between the two subjects, between that sense of bureaucracy and corruption and actually creating value for your client?
Thank you. I think a lot of the questions were directed to Ohaga, so I think there were at least 3 for you. Perhaps you could go through them, and then Khairan, there's one for you about the sports blog. Okay, we can start with Achta, who's online. Achta, did you get the question that was directed to you? Did you hear it?
I heard it very well.
Would you like to deal with that first before I turn to Mr. Ohaga?
Sure, with pleasure. And I thank the participant for the question. Not an easy one. The thing is, regarding this case of CAF and BIN, I have to say that first of all, I worked for CAF and I know the contract, so I have confidentiality obligation not to speak about everything, but I will give you my opinion as a sports law practitioner, let's say that. I have been surprised because this was something that came from nowhere, from what I know. And I have to say, I hope that they did it, they reflected well before doing it, and they know what they're doing. When I say they, it's CAF, because terminating the contract with BIN, it's a huge contract for CAF. So I think it's the biggest contract, broadcasting contract for CAF. So hopefully they took everything into consideration before terminating it. How does it affect African viewers? From my personal view, I think it would be not so bad because BIN actually has both the competition for CAF in bundles. So for some countries, I think it wasn't the most beneficial for them, because I know that we had to handle some countries that wanted to buy back their own competition, it was very difficult to buy it from beIN. So I think maybe if CAF has reflected well before terminating it, maybe now going forward, if they find a good resolution to the matter, maybe it would be more interesting for African countries, the small African countries, because I know that they buy the competition in bundles, and most of the time they give more interest to the biggest countries, and the small countries, they cannot have access to their own matches. So maybe it's not going to be so bad for African viewers. But for the termination case, it per se, let's wait and see, because it was quite surprising for me. Thank you.
And of course, I'm sure that it will end up in some dispute resolution forum, and we'll wait to see how that pans out. Kevin, with respect to your question about caste jurisdiction, it's actually quite straightforward. FIA has no aspiration to be part of the Olympic body, so why should they subject themselves to caste? You don't see motorsport in the Olympics. In the same way, for instance, you may very well find that the NBA, for instance, may not subscribe to CAS jurisdiction. So certainly, yes, there are certain federations and certain sports which do not subscribe to CAS jurisdiction. It's really a question of how you want to relate with a global sports family. But the majority of sporting federations will submit to CAS. A lot of the sporting federations in North America will have their own dispute resolution system. And that's because really they see themselves as a separate market. Again, the commercialization of sport allows them to have the necessary financial resources to mean that they can operate on their own in the way that they see best. So for me, that seems to me the straightforward rationale for decisions such as those. The question around enforceability, I have to confess, I wasn't quite sure what the question was, because are you speaking about foreign arbitral awards from a sporting perspective? I see, is it your suggestion that the system is infected with corruption, and therefore, I understand the bureaucracy. The bureaucracy bedevils all of us. You've got awards pending 4 or 5 years. You've taken 18 months, 24 months to complete an arbitration, an international arbitration, and then you have to wait. And that seems to me to be something that is really a question of our entire system. Not just as a country, but I think you find it across the continent. Some of it may be the result of corruption, but sport also has its own way of enforcing these things. As you know, for instance, when you go to FIFA as an international player in relation to your status or in relation to your emoluments, and there's a finding made in your favor, then there are certain sanctions that immediately can be imposed. So there are those which have to go through the process in order to be recognized and enforced, and there are those that can be enforced immediately, arising from the way that the rules are structured. So it's a question of, I like to think that when you start off on a journey, you've got to conceptualize your pathway to eventually enforcing the fruit of whatever forum you activated, and to recognize what the obstacles will be and to manage your expectations accordingly. And also, of course, to mitigate the risks that come with that particular forum. I can't see, there was a question about a newsletter, but I think that's for you.
Okay, so was for Griffin. From what I understand, you're talking about newsletter where they post jobs sports law jobs and information. Yeah, so unfortunately, as a former, would say consultant law in sport, it is an international platform. However, the information and material is mostly Europe, UK centric. And of course, with the jobs that they post there, they're paid for. They're paid to recruit sports lawyers to work for them. And more or less, or rather all of them are jobs based there. So you find qualifications needed, and people who are wanted are people who are qualified either in the UK or Europe. And if you find, especially with most of the world governing bodies based in Switzerland, you're required either to have a work permit, or actually required to have a work permit in Switzerland or have a language, either Spanish, French. So it doesn't exactly, favor us. But then I think as a collective and for all of us, I think one way we can work in favor for us is having a platform for Africans and have African jobs from Africa's stakeholders and governing bodies, advertising and marketing for such. And of course, for information, I would urge you students to now help us with the research and writing the blogs and these articles. I don't know that Peter is pointing the back. Yeah. So anyway, I had started the same with sports legal back in the day when I was also learning. Yeah. Yeah, of course, LinkedIn works. LinkedIn works. It has worked for me. It really helps, with the networking, broadening up just knowledge also. I think use it well as a platform, and at the same time, I'm reiterating on this subject. You have to do the job as well. I tried, or rather I did it. It helped me get to where I am today. I'm not saying I'll stop, but I'll also volunteer to give the platform through Sports Legal also for anyone who would want to, write, just provide an information based on issues in sports law in Africa. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. I think we probably still have some questions or comments, but the good news is after I round up, we will have an opportunity to go outside, have some refreshments, and talk to each other about anything remaining. Thank you also to the online audience for participating. Really, I just wanted to summarize what I thought were the key messages from today. The first is that sports law is very portable. It's an international career, and there appear to be a number of opportunities. I think the opportunities are an issue of mindset. So I think we have to be prepared to volunteer, particularly in a field of sport that we're interested in. Listening to the people around me, this is how they got along. They started volunteering, writing rules, sitting on particular bodies, be prepared to take some pro bono work, and consider internships which won't be highly paid. So I think when we look at opportunities, we need to think that it's more important to get the relevant experience initially than it is for you to make money. I think if you start with the mindset that I need to make money, you will actually probably miss out on the opportunities that allow you to build the relationships long term. We heard about law sportiva, law locida, and then apparently Philip has invented his own law. It's called the law of willingness. It's a new law launching here today by the ALN Academy. And it comes back to this idea that you have to be willing, you have to put in the hard work, and you should not look for a short-term return, because to develop in this field is a long-term commitment. So under the law of willingness, if you give back to the universe, eventually it will come back to you. Maybe not in the direct way you're looking at, but certainly it will come back to you. And then I think all the panelists talked about investing in yourself. Investing in yourself is hard unless you actually have a true passion. If you have a passion, that passion will drive you. It will get you over the ups and downs that inevitably you will come across. So I think investing in yourself is something you can do once you've identified an actual interest and a passion. I think it's very hard to say, I'm just going to be a sports lawyer. A sports lawyer who does what? I mean, it's such a wide field. There are those who specialize in image rights. There are those who negotiate contracts. There are those who, you know, do all the contracting for large events like the World Cup. There are those who will pursue sexual harassment claims. What exactly is it you mean? Because to me, when you talk about sports law, you're just actually just talking about the law. There's arbitration, there's dispute resolution, there's mediation. What is it you actually have an interest in? So thank you so much for participating. Really good to see the level of interest. I hope this has given you some ideas of where maybe you can start or how to continue on your journey. But the other thing I'd like to say is everyone here today has had a different journey. There's no one who has followed the same path or the same interest, and yet they've all managed to progress. So I don't think there's one pathway. I think it is up to you as an individual also to make your own path. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so yeah, thank you. I think we'll just head out for refreshments, honestly. I think there's a request for a photo op, but you know, I think even I have to just say this because I say this a lot to young people. When you profile yourself on LinkedIn, it's not about what you're wearing. It's really not. It's about content. Let's do it. Let's do it appropriately, please. I often do see people who write about, I don't know, arbitration and things, but there's nothing about the photo that is linked to the content. So, you know, this is my honest advice. There is a way and there is another way. If you want to do another way, there's Instagram, there's YouTube. But the LinkedIn is the professional way, and it actually has a set of unspoken rules, and you can do yourself a disservice or you can actually progress. So that's why I'm not interested in the photo op. Thank you.